of that nature, things 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 of that nature.
And welcome into the Pod of That Nature Behind Enemy Lines, as well as a little opponent preview. As you all know, the Arkansas Razorbacks will be facing off against the Oklahoma State Cowboys this weekend in Stillwater. I'm John Nabors, and we're going to talk a little bit more about it. A lot of Razorback fans may not know much about Oklahoma State, considering that they haven't played each other since 1980. So no one better to do it than to welcome in a very special guest. It's Marshall Scott. He is the owner of Pistols Firing. Great website and great digital content being put out each and every day dealing with the Oklahoma State Cowboys. And Marshall, appreciate you joining us, man. How you doing this afternoon?
I'm doing well. Thank you for having me. Looking forward to it.
So let's just start with Oklahoma State in general. Last year had a little bit of a rocky start, just to be honest. And then it, ended up being all right. And then this year, Oklahoma State seems to have returned everybody. They had a nice game against South Dakota State, which people probably look at that name. They're like, oh, well, they beat them. Oh, no, that's one of the best teams in the FCS. So tough opponent. But just overall, what's the focus, the expectation, the mentality, the overall feel from fans as well as media heading into this season for Oklahoma State and the expectation they have?
Yeah, I think the expectation for the fan base right now is you're competing for a Big 12 title. And when you're doing that now in this 12-team playoff world, that means you're competing for a college football playoff spot. So I think, national media perceptions are a little under of maybe what the fan base is expecting. Oklahoma State's ranked like 17th, 18th right now. So that's not quite where Oklahoma State fans see, just based on kind of what you mentioned, that all these guys that they've got returning. They've got 5-6-year guys on the offensive line. They've got Alan Bowman, who's in his 7th year playing quarterback. Got Ollie Gordon, the reigning Doug Walker winner. And then they've got 3 receivers that I think this is probably the best receiving group that Oklahoma State's probably had since Mason Rudolph was slinging the pill to James Washington, Marcel Aitman, Chris Lacey, all guys who have played in the NFL. So, I think as far as expectations go for this year, every year, every team across the country, the fan bases have high expectations for. But I think this year in Stillwater, it's turned up a little bit.
So speaking of the expectations, before we get into the game itself, is that different now that you don't have Texas and Oklahoma in the conference anymore? I mean, I know that this has been a huge thing with the Big 12 and the teams they've added, not only here a couple of years ago, but now the ones from the Pac-12. I don't even know how you can call it the Big 12. It's so different, but has that really, getting Texas and Oklahoma out of the conference, has that made it to where, not saying it's easier, but definitely changed it a little bit to where the expectations moving forward as a program may be a little higher?
Yeah, I think in this particular season, I don't think it would have mattered just because of everybody that OSU is returning. But I think, long term, it's hard to not think that way, just because, Oklahoma had such a stranglehold over the league from, 2010 or whatever it was through 2018. Texas obviously wins the league on their way out. They just finally got it together at the last moment to win the league. So I think there's maybe a little bit of that, but the Big 12 has just been so open these last however many years. A lot of different teams playing for the Big 12 title, a lot of different teams winning the Big 12 title. You got TCU, you got K-State, you've got Oklahoma, you've got Texas. Oklahoma State's been in the game 2 of the last 3 years. So I think there could be some of that, but I think with this particular group, I think even if OU and Texas were still in the Big 12, I think the fan base would have just had as high of expectations.
So I know that there's a lot of talent, but the thing that stood out to me when I was looking at Oklahoma State was the experience. If I'm not mistaken, like every offensive lineman that's starting is a 60-year senior.
Yeah.
You got him, and of course Alan Bowman's there. Like, just this team's got talent, but how much of that expectation, that high expectation that people have, is just based on the amount of older veterans, experienced guys, and staying healthy, the biggest thing, but just all of that mixed together for offense as well as defense.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting kind of part to this, because this offensive line has played together for the most part. And they added Dalton Cooper last year. They got Isaiah Glass, who's kind of rotating in. They got him out of the portal this year. But this group has stayed together pretty much since they've gotten on campus, this offensive line. And there were some rough days, as would be expected from a freshman or sophomore playing in the offensive line. That's not, that's a grown man's area down there. So, there have been peaks and valleys as far as the fan base's perception of this offensive line. And it was somewhat similar even Saturday against South Dakota State. They kept Alan Bowman clean. I think he was hurried 3 times, didn't get sacked. But Ollie Gordon kind of had to work for those rushing yards that he got. So that's kind of a big focus going into this game is hey, we've got to open up lanes for Ollie Gordon a little bit more. And then as far as Alan Bowman goes, it's kind of the same thing where last year I think he was like 15 touchdowns to 14 interceptions. Wasn't really the cleanest at all times, but at the same time, he entering the year was in a 3 quarterback rotation with 2 other guys. And that's, his first year on campus. So now that he's got this year, and then maybe most importantly, a full preseason where, he is the unquestioned guy. Early returns, that South Dakota State game, it looked like the most comfortable he's been in an Oklahoma State uniform. I think it was probably his best game, had his highest completion percentage of his Oklahoma State career thus far. So I think there are some like peaks and valleys among that. But just based off their performance, scoring 44 points on the back-to-back FCS national champs, a team that hadn't lost a game in 29 games. They were 29-0. Their last loss before that was the 2022 opener to Iowa, is a 7-3 loss. So I think right now the fan base is on a high, but there have been some ups and downs in terms of how both the offensive line and Alan Bowman have been perceived throughout their time.
Now, Marshall, let's talk about this game. Arkansas fans, to be honest, like they're confident because it's early season. You're 1-0. It's hard not to at least have some sort of confidence. But I think most Razorback fans looking at this is going to be extremely tough. Where if they go in and win, it'll be huge. Like it'll really be a huge win. And I think a lot of them aren't expecting just to walk into Stillwater and win. How do Oklahoma State fans view this game against a team that it's so stupid that they're less than 3 hours away, and this is the first time that they've met in 40 some odd years? But how do they feel about the Razorbacks into this game and welcoming in an SEC team like them into their stadium?
Yeah, kind of going along with that. Now that OU's gone, there's nobody closer in the Big 12 than Arkansas. So it's just like, how has this not been happening for as long as it has? But yeah, I think the fan base is overall pretty confident, and I think the 70-0 result that the Hogs got against Pine Bluff the other night, that might have for some portions of the fan base, made some sweaty palms or something like that. But then there's another side of the fan base that says, well, who is Arkansas Pine Bluff? 2-9 last year, I believe they were both of their wins by a single point. So I think there's a little bit of both of those things going on. But right now, I think the prevailing sentiment, anyways, would be that Oklahoma State's going to win this game, but it'd probably be pretty tight. I think 7 to 10 points. I think is where most OSU fans will kind of think that this game is going to play out.
So why, in your opinion, has Arkansas and Oklahoma State not played more? Because listen, Fayetteville, there is in the SEC that they've been since 1992. Right now, the closest campus to Fayetteville in the SEC, well, before Norman, I guess, but was either Columbia, Missouri, which is like 5.5 hours away, or Oxford, Mississippi, which is 6 hours. That's absurd. And these two teams, they play each other in basketball, they play each other in baseball, but I don't know. Like, why do you think that this game just hasn't happened for over 44 years, considering how close they are?
Yeah, I haven't talked to anybody about it, but I imagine at some point it was probably, it's a 14 playoff. You lose one game, that's not great. And so I don't know, which way that would have even gone. Arkansas obviously playing in the SEC. They've the Razorbacks have a loaded schedule. They don't really need to add another, good opponent to that. And then, similarly, Oklahoma State is now scheduling tougher opponents. They've got a home and home with Oregon coming up, a home and home with Alabama coming up. Arkansas is going to be on the schedule a little more regularly, but that's just kind of now. Oklahoma State's just kind of now getting into that. So yeah, your guess is as good as mine. I'd guess it'd have something to do with a 14 playoff, maybe not wanting to, drop an early game that could hurt you down the line for either team. But yeah, I'm certainly glad that it makes too much sense for these two teams to be playing each other. So I'm glad it's finally happening.
Yeah, especially for the old school Big 12, because Arkansas played Texas Tech in the regular season. They played TCU in the regular season. They played Texas in the regular season. A&M. They've played Kansas State. It's like it just seemed like every other team but the two Oklahoma schools. But that's okay as long as it's been since Oklahoma State. Arkansas has not played Oklahoma in the regular season since 1926. Jeez. So that's about to change now that they're in the SEC. A couple of players I want to ask you about, and I know one of them is injured, but a former Razorback, AJ Green, came over to Oklahoma State. And I think Razorback fans really like that. They had no problem with AJ Green. They understood, running backs is a tough position. And the fact that he was at Arkansas as long as he was without transferring, backing up to Rocket Sanders, whoever, was impressive. But just dealing with that injury, what's kind of going on? What's his current status? And Was he somebody that Oklahoma State fans were hoping to count on this year in the running game? Which always Gordon's great, obviously, but was he somebody that maybe could have cracked the rotation there?
Yeah, I think definitely. I think he would have definitely played a factor. I imagine it was tough. Even he's from Tulsa Union, so AJ Green's from the state. But I imagine it's tough to get a transfer running back to be like, okay, I'll go into this room that has Ollie Gordon already in it. Because that's where a lot of the carries are going to go. He's injured right now. It seems right now sort of like it could be for the year. That they'll just kind of go ahead and shut him down. If not the year, it's going to be, I think, pretty late into the season. But yeah, I think he was on pace to get a good amount of playing time because whenever he got injured, Oklahoma State went back into the portal and brings Indiana transfer Trent Howland out. They've got a lot of young backs. They've got a redshirt freshman in Sessi Valahi. They've got 2 true freshmen that they really like, but I think they really wanted some experience to back up Ollie Gordon just in case something were to happen to him this season. So I think AJ Green was going to factor in both in the return game and in the offense had he been able to stay healthy.
Also, another player, Colin Clay. People forget that he was at Arkansas, and it just shows how long it's been since he was here, and also just how veteran of an experienced guy he is on the defensive line. Had a nice little game though in the season opener. But what do you make of him? And is he a legitimate threat there on the defensive line, especially in that interior position?
Yeah, absolutely. He'll be playing a ton. Him and Justin Kirkland, another big dude down there. They rotate in and out. Oklahoma State's been running a little bit more 4-down looks, so there could be times where they're both in it at the same time. But yeah, he's pretty much played since he's got onto campus. He's another Oklahoma guy out of either Putnam City North, I believe. So yeah, he's made an impact pretty much since getting on campus. He's a great dude. We've gotten to talk to him a handful of times. Comes from a great family. So yeah, it's been a lot of fun covering Colin Clay.
Okay, so last one before I let you get out of here. This is just the one I've always thought was so interesting in college sports, especially college football nowadays. Long tenured coaches just don't exist.
Yeah,
Nick Saban finally retired. I think Kirk Ferentz, of course, has been at Iowa, and I don't think he'll ever leave. But people forget Mike Gundy and how long he has been there at Oklahoma State. I've always found it interesting because he's had success. I think after his first year, the worst record he had was 7-6, which is great considering where some programs are at. But one, why has he stayed there for as long as he has? And two, do you ever see him leaving? Because let's be honest, Arkansas just hired John Calipari from Kentucky, and I don't think anyone saw that coming. So I guess anything's possible. But why has he been there? And do you ever see him actually finally leaving Stillwater for some other job?
Yeah, well, I think the main thing, this is home for him. He went to school here. He was Barry Sanders and Thurman Thomas's quarterback. So he's got that legacy tying him to it. There have been other times where, reportedly been flirting with Baylor, been flirting with Tennessee, things along that nature. But I think at this point, I think he's here until he's done. I think he's probably earned that right as well. You mentioned, the bowl streak that they've gone on. This is year 20 that Gundy has been the coach of the program. The only time they didn't make a bowl was his first season. So I think that he's probably earned that right to know when he wants to call it quits. There's been times in the not too distant past where he said, that he's kind of seeing hole 18, and then but here lately he said he's still got plenty in him. So I don't know when that time is going to come, but yeah, I think it's got it has a lot to do with him being an alum. Obviously that helps him not want to maybe leave if you can get a good deal to stick around in Stillwater. And then yeah, with all the success he's had, it's going to take something I think pretty drastic for the administration to pull the plug on him. So yeah, I think he's earned that right. He's been around a long time, and I don't see that changing anytime soon.
All right, I said last one, but we'll ask a real quick one.
Right.
We're going to be making the trip to Stillwater here at Inside Arkansas, and we're actually set up at Eskimo Joe's after the game to do our post-game show. But for those Razorback fans that are traveling, which is going to be a lot of them, what in Stillwater do they need to check out, look for, something fun that they can do, just anything that people are making the trip for the first time over there?
Yeah, so not a ton to do in Stillwater. What you do in Stillwater is go to OSU sporting events. But yeah, I would say definitely go to Joe's. Sweet pepper bacon cheese fries, that's the move. If you need something a little bit more hearty, their blackened chicken's really good. Hideaway Pizza, it's not too far from the stadium as well. A really good pizza place. There's a taco truck that's on 6th and Western. I should know the name of it. I don't. But good taco truck. Yeah, plenty of good spots to eat. But I think if you haven't been to Stillwater and you are going to make the trip, Eskimo Joe's for some people is a little overrated, but I think you've got to make the pilgrimage there. The experience of it is a whole lot of fun. And then, there would be tailgates out the wazoo. Oklahoma State tailgates really well. And there, plenty of nice people around. If you walk around and look hungry, I'm sure somebody will offer you something. So, I'd say, especially for an 11 a.m. kick, just hang out around the stadium and you're bound to have a good time.
It's going to be a great time no matter what. Should be a great game between two opponents and a big one for the rest of the season for both of them. But that is Marshall Scott. He is the owner of Pistols Firing. You can check him out on Twitter or X, whatever you want to call it, at Marshall Scott OK. But Marshall, appreciate it. Enjoy the game. Enjoy this weekend, man. And I'm sure we'll be catching up with you later down the road.
Awesome. Thank you for having me.